name is Harry Baker. I am a poet and a mathematician. And for a long time I told myself the two were very separate things. I like maths because there were definite right answers, and I like poetry because there weren't as many wrong ones. And then more recently I started to look at the two together because I had a very special birthday. I turned 10,000 days old, which I think is a birthday we don't celebrate enough. My way of celebrating it was writing a show all around poetry and maths and the things that they do have in common. And by writing a show all around poetry and maths, one thing I learned that they do have in common is a lot of people don't like either. And another thing they have in common is this idea of playfulness, this idea of connections and patterns, of trying to make sense of the world. And whether that's through numbers or words, it's an inherently playful idea. So the first poem I'd like to share with you comes from this sense of playfulness. I wanted to play around with language, with alliteration, but rather than just picking one sound and sticking with it for the whole poem, I thought I'd try and go through the whole alphabet and pick a different thing for each letter as I went. And as I started writing this poem, I realized at the same time, maybe I could also try and map the history of the universe as I went, just to keep it light. First, there was nothing. I'm talking nothing but nothing. Then there was something. In amongst that nothing was something. And some things somehow split into some things, and some things even managed to become things. So take Adam. Adam was added up out of atoms. Before that it was black and barren, then it became big and banging. Out of the chaos came countless crazy complex patterns, and then dinosaurs happened. Through evolution, everything's edited every day. That's how we fine-tune, finesse, and then finally find our way. Just as the galaxies have gotten to gear, the game changed because hip hooray Homo sapiens can. And we invent, imagine, inspire, and innovate. We've journeyed from jamming in caves to jamming jam in a cake. That knack for knowledge knitted and knotted away like silent case. We learn the language of living, often a little late. We make music. We maneuver mathematical methods. We've noticed and noted the nodes of our own neural networks overflowing, outpouring open mics to operatics. We are the poor pathetic couple did a programming again. Because we question. From quick quizzes to quantum quarks. Revolutions of the heart to renaissances of art. You see, scriptures and science seek sons of the sublime. Meanwhile, through trees triggers the entirety of time. Our universe is unfinished but utterly underway. Its vibrancy vibrates via ventricles, valves, and veins. You see, we wonder and we wonder. We explore and we explain. We yearn for what is yonder. As we zoom out into space, we can forget we were not the first to be here. By any stretch, we will not be the last to leave. And whilst we can't control our history or know our distant future, we can make the most of what might lie us. We can be kind, and we can accept the kindness of others. The world shows us what we allow ourselves the time to discover. We can listen, truly listen to another person's needs. Not just wait until they've stopped talking to take our turns, as people can be brave enough to try and make all kinds of mistakes. We can be playful because what is a life without play? We can remind ourselves each day it's not too late for new beginnings when a single moment cannot the whole universe with you. Because when we zoom out, we realize how small it becomes. So either none of it matters, or all of it does. From atoms, Big Bang, chaos, dinosaurs, evolution. The fine-tuning of the galaxies to humans. Imagine that journey of knowledge through language and music not overflow with the poetry of quantum revolution. As a sublime trickles through the universe's veins. We want to explore, yearn, and zoom out once again. Because when we zoom out, we realize how small it becomes. So either none of this matters, or all of it does. Thank you so much. This next poem I finished writing on the 16th of March, 2020. It's for an event in the UK around poetry and climate change. I think they figured with climate change that they'd let scientists have a go, let politicians get involved, hadn't quite cracked it yet. Time to break the big guns. For me, writing about something as massive as climate change can feel very overwhelming. It's easy to feel like we as individuals can't make a difference. Why don't we just give up? And so I wanted to take inspiration from the world around us, from the number of times that nature has surpassed our expectations and showed us that in fact often it's just our imaginations that are limiting factors. And on the day that I was due to perform this poem for the first time, it was announced that we were going into lockdown in the UK because of this thing called coronavirus. And so I wasn't able to share that poem on a stage in front of people in the way that I intended for a very long time. But it turns out, having just written a poem about trying not to give up in the face of a massive existential crisis, really came into its own in the following weeks and months and years. And so I wanted to share it with you, partly just as a celebration of the fact that we can be here in this space together today, but also as a reminder to myself as much as anything, to not give up even when things feel difficult. And this poem is called Impossible. As a mathematician, impossible has got a very clear definition. But as a poet, it feels like more of a grey area. And for me, that's what I find. I'm finding it too easy to tell myself things are too hard. When facing the end, it's too late to even make a start. But if we take impossible to mean that we don't have a chance, we have lost sight of how unlikely it was we would get this far. The way the single fish outwits the shark by sticking with its school. The way the crescent moon outspins its dart to once again be full. Even winter, given long enough, begins to lose its cool, which was once exceptional and barely registers at all. Flamingos and giraffes let the words run by a child. We can't begin to comprehend all of the ways this world is wild. None of them asked if they were possible before they came to be. None of them have ceased to exist by being told they're make-believe. The bug who finds it all too much and tries to shut off everything. To have recovered and then summoned up the strength that stretches wings the snake so full of itself that it cannot help but shed its skin. Or how instead of death, the hedgehog went to bed and slept as well. To think that Earth exists at this specific distance from the sun, down to the angle of the axis on which everything is spun, the fact that trees happen to breathe, that which we need inside our lungs, would all seem impossible had it not already been done. We are impossible to everyone who's ever gone before, and everyone who's yet to come will push impossible some more. Just as indeed the do's we did outdo the don'ts we didn't. So everything's impossible until it isn't. The thought of rivers changing course before somebody gave it down. Or that the tide might turn from shore before a line's drawn in the sand. We cannot know how far our actions go, the impacts they might have. Sometimes the only thing that we can do is to do what we can. Just as the night is at its darkest when it's introduced to day. Just as the dry is at its harshest in the breath before it rains. It's easy enough to believe in something when it's all okay, but it's when times are at their hardest that it's hardest to have faith. Yet when the light begins to fade, that's when we need it the most. It's by surviving day to day that we see seasons evolve. If there was never any doubt, there'd be no reason for hope. It could be too late to do anything. It sure as hell as if we don't. And I am tired of that doom and gloom and self-fulfilling prophecy. I am trying to find room to bloom and self-fulfill the opposite. When it's an act of revolution to try to stay remotely positive, nothing wishy-washy about opting to be optimistic. Whether a brighter future is possible, we may not truly know. But the first step towards that future is imagining it so. So as indeed the do's we did outdo the don'ts we didn't. So it remains impossible until it isn't. And when it's over, and we're no more than old bones within the ground, still the soil knows to sow its seeds from what is broken down, what is lost is always lost until the moment it is found. And these things only ever go one way, and that's return around. We are so constantly surrounded that it's easy to forget this world was built upon impossible that has not stopped us yet. So yes, indeed, the do's we did outdo the don'ts we didn't. It only stays impossible until it isn't. you so much. It's so lovely to be able to be here performing with other people in the room. I did a lot of online gigs during lockdown. And I would say one of the key differences between a gig online and a gig like this is on something like Zoom, you can see everyone's faces really clearly, but they're all on mute, so you can't hear them. Whereas here, I can hear you all fantastically because of the lights. I can't really see your faces at all. And no offense, but I do prefer it this way around. There is a phrase in that last poem called "when this is over," which is a phrase I found myself using a lot in the past couple of years, and there hasn't been a moment when things have magically gone back to normal, and there won't be a moment like that, and I think it's going to take us all a long time to fully process this massive thing that has happened to us all and the effects that it is having. But I did want to take this moment to say what a genuine joy it is to be in this room sharing this moment with you. I love this. I've really missed it. I've got one more poem I'd like to share with you, and I wrote this after a conversation I had with a friend during lockdown. He is a musician, and he had a similar experience to me. Gigs had disappeared overnight, his world had shrunk in a big way, as had mine, and I felt like I had shrunk with it. And he used a phrase that stuck out to me. He said he felt like he had to edit himself based on who he was talking to fit in with their expectations. And for me, for a long time, I worried about what it meant to fit in. Whereas these days, I'm far more excited about what it means to fill out and to be the best, most brilliant, bold versions of ourselves that we can be. And I feel like for me today, being here 1,700 kilometers from home at the same time that they're putting a crown on an old man's head, this is the best version of myself that I can be. And I'm especially grateful to be able to say that, because there was a while when that did begin to feel impossible. It wasn't just that we couldn't have these live performances and form those meaningful connections in the same way. Even when I was at home by myself, I felt unable to write. I didn't have that capacity to be creative because all of my energy was going towards trying to cope with that day to day. But another way, I felt like I had lost my sense of playfulness. And the only reason why I'm able to be here in front of you is in that moment when I felt most vulnerable and most broken. I felt like there were people near me who could hold that space with me. I started going to therapy for the first time, and I have friends who I was able to share that with, and bit by bit, it felt like we could slowly piece me back together, whatever that meant. And so this last poem is dedicated to my friends, also to myself, also to anyone who has felt like they have lost a part of themselves, or had to hide a part of themselves. Because in those moments, I think it is easy to feel like that's never coming back. But this is a reminder to listen to the people in your life who will lift you up rather than bring you down. The people who will expand you rather than shrink you. And to try and be those people for one another. This poem is simply called Unashamed. It's not your job to make sure others feel more comfortable. You need not dull your glow in the hope they might see. You need not water down your core to be more palatable. May you be the you that you need you to be, unashamed. We cannot help how others see us, though we may well try our hardest. How we see ourselves can free ourselves to be ourselves regardless. Home is where you can be open-hearted. Whether trapped or trapeze artist, all comes down to how we're harnessed. I'm trying to free my roots. Like playing past the past, all packed with past steps. When the music stops and no one's watching with you, keep on dancing. Let us decorate and garnish. Any reputation is tarnished, because despite it all, I still fancy our chance. Let us not file away our edges in an effort to be smooth. When the records show the dents, how we get to that groove. Or that energy invested in the editing of you, I hope one day you'll let it loose and let me be there when you do. Because in the moment when your guard slipped for a second or two, I could have sworn I caught a glimpse and I saw heaven in you. Unashamed. Unless you're Senator or Ghana, there's no point adopting layers when the heart of you is the part of you that's blazing. And others may have tried to hide your light. You may have joined in this yourself. But joy of joys, the joy of joys, it shall not be overwhelmed. You could be static, or your static could cause lightning storms. Whether it's lions or it's iron, or your core contains all types of raw, that friction that you feel is an igniting force, so light the torch if we can't see it in ourselves, then what is brightness for? We do those closest to us a disservice if we only ever let them see the small of us. If we can open up enough to let them get beneath the surface, there's so much more to love. If we can show them all of us, the flaws in us, the force of us, the full-on awe of us, the rise and fall of us, the wise and fall in us, yes, all of us, the fine and coarse of us, the fine print in the claws of us, the fire imprinted in our blood cells as they course in us, it's all in us, so call it what you want, there's something cool in us. I've caught enough of you to know that you're enough. Any boxes they may try and stop you with, instead of building up a fort, let's make a rocket ship. Treat them as photos, not negatives developed into positives, but nothing more than simply a snapshot of things. Because all the best bits of your story are still yet to be unfurled. You are the caterpillar that becomes a butterfly, that flaps its wings, causing earthquake halfway around the world. You are amazing. And if they try to rain on your parade, let it remind you how much fun it is to party while it's raining. May you take up space and stay there, unashamed.